Hello and welcome to our Saturday Fantasy Grounds map and image creation stream. I'm Josh, and thank you all for joining me here today. These are the maps that we had finished up last week. We had started actually one of these a couple of weeks ago, and we added on an additional room to it and did some extra things, and then we jumped in and did a really quick kind of a regional map as well. As far as like news that's going on in the Fantasy Grounds realm in the image and map creation area, we actually have a bunch of new tools that we've been working on, which is very exciting, and hopefully that will be in testing soon. Without going too much into detail about that, I'm very super excited about that, and it should add a whole new array of functionality to our map creation and image creation in general inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity. Besides that, new art packs that are going to be coming out. I'm not sure if they're going to be coming out this month or the following one, but I've just completed 3 new art packs of modern industrial areas, which is pretty exciting, and that should cover a whole slew of different environments that can be built. Everything from, well, I guess that kind of sums it up. Modern industrial. There's lots of machinery, pipes and things, lots of different types of structural elements. Many brushes and floor textures and tons of other things. I think there's a little over 500 images there between the 3 packs, so that should be super exciting. I also have a bunch of Western art packs that will be coming out as well. Western towns and so on and so forth. In addition to that, some more fantasy stuff will be coming your way. I have some art packages for creating castle environments and some other stuff as well. So lots of great stuff coming out in the next few months here. And plenty of stuff that is planned beyond that. So keep your eyes peeled. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on in the art side of Fantasy Grounds, as well as everywhere, really. Lots of exciting things that are happening here. So, without further ado, we should just jump into doing some more map creation, which is one of the primary functionalities of the stream. We like to do lots of different types of tutorials, as well as any sort of tips or tricks. And if you guys have any questions, I know that this system can be a little bit daunting at first. It is quite intuitive, I feel. And if you just jump right in and start working with it, you'll see that it works extremely well. It works seamlessly with all the other tools inside of Fantasy Grounds. In fact, one of the things that I think is so overlooked is with the new module builder. There's a lot of integration that you can do between your image creation, whatever you happen to create, and placing those right inside of the module builder, which is a super exciting kind of thing. Let me just, we can just jump in and do like a quick little demonstration of that before we get going too far here. So if anyone's unfamiliar with this, if you go into your modules, you'll see at the bottom of the modules element down here, we have builder. And if we click on this, what it actually is going to do, and now let me just delete these, and we can come right back up to our original kind of thing here. Let's get that out of the way. This is a wonderful tool, and you can use this in replace of or in tandem with the story elements, especially if you're doing a lot of homebrew content. And if you're doing a lot of kind of interactive elements that you can mix and match between textual elements and all of your image creation. And even if you've just imported images and whatnot, you can handle all of this stuff right in through here. I'm not sure if there's been a lot of other documentation or videos on this particular builder, but it's a very powerful kind of tool set that we have now inside of Fantasy Grounds. And then once you've completed it, you can export it as a module and then re-import it into different campaigns and whatnot. So it's really exciting. One of the things that we can do inside of here, as I was saying before, we're just going to create a new page here, and I'm just going to call this a test page, and I'm just going to quickly kind of demonstrate how we can integrate maybe these two maps that we've just created this last week into a page here where we have easy access to it. We can add in other elements as well, as I said before, textual elements, headers, and so on and so forth, much along the same lines that you'd expect in the story elements and the notes and so on. But one of the great things that this actually does is it integrates the image right into it, right? So it's almost like an embedded image. I'm sure that you've all been or are familiar with the reference manuals that come with a lot of the rule sets and also some of the other products. So this is a way for you guys to create your own reference manual right inside of Fantasy Grounds. And you know how important it is to have a lot of that image information right there for you as well. So one of the great things that we can do is we can create an image block, and we can also create image blocks with textual elements right attached to it. And so there's so many different ways you can kind of interact with the system. But what we can do here, I'll just create an image block here, and you can see that we have immediately, and this has got two different elements. Well, actually, let's just do an image, just a singular image here. And what we can do is we can grab this little guy and drop it right in here. That's rather interesting. Try that again here. We can go into our Images tab here. And let's look for our Victorian little homestead right here. If I grab this and drop this in, let's get back onto our page here. We'll create this element. We can drag and drop the but it'll I'm not sure why that I know exactly why it's doing that. It's because of the way that we have this kind of set up here. But let's create this in a little bit different of a way here. So we have this little guy over here, and the same kind of token. What we can do is we can create links, but we can also create other elements as well. So if we drag and drop this in, we can create our own little element over here. Be able to do this. Go to the grab any one of these, I suppose. And this is going to, for some reason, not cooperate with me as I'm trying to do this. But yes, this is all integrated into the system here. And we can kind of do lots of stuff with it here. Let me just create one with a text block, and let's see how this is acting. We'll just grab one of these kind of elements. So perhaps we'll grab, we can grab, and here is one of the other regional art packs that you can use to create kind of an in-between kind of area there. So let's grab, we'll grab this little dungeon scene that we created on one of the streams as well. So what we can do is when we create this element here, I should be able to drag and drop this right in here and create a kind of, but for some reason this is being a little bit buggy. So, but this is all a very cool kind of aspect, and you can all of these buttons down here, you can have text blocks, header blocks, for example, and once these are created, you can change the order of them, and then you can pop this out, and this will actually create a nice little environment from which you can actually work here and lock this up just like you would any particular type of other element here. So if we were to type in here our header, and all of these images and whatnot are going to be affected by your theme as well, so it should always be integrated very well into whatever environment you're using, rule set, and so on. But as I said before, all of this is integrated. You can type in all of your texts. You still have all of the capability of dragging and dropping links into this as well. And you can create all of the different things that you could actually do with all of the other kind of integrated systems that you do in like story elements and so on. So this is a great tool. And you can, as I said, this will create, let's just do like a little, I'll grab like this map here, the cabin map. And let's see, do I have this? do not. Let's create one really quick here. So we'll drag and drop this guy right in here, create this cabin map, and then I will grab this guy and drop it right into here. Should be able to do this. Now you can also grab these elements and drop them directly in here as well to create illustrative elements like this. And what we can do is we can create other elements. Let's drop this down. I think you might have to do it from here. So now let me type in, I guess it's cabin. And it's not going to work for me at the moment. But this does function, I swear. And you can put all of these different elements into there, and you can have easy access. So one of the things that I like to do in my own games is I'll create these records. And instead of having maybe lots of pins, I could have all of my encounters on one side as well. And so you can start to organize and interact with the system in lots of cool, interesting ways. So, what would you guys like to build today? What should we put together? Do you guys have any sort of things that you've been working on that you've been struggling with, or is there something that you are going to be creating in the future that you might want to see how I might go about it? Or, oh, we could do a circus. Ooh, a modern school. You know, I actually have some plans to be creating elements for like a modern other environments as well. As I said, I've just finished creating 3 packages, 3 art packs for modern industrial areas. So like schools and hospitals and other places where you might have more use out of particular elements. But all of that stuff we could probably create with all of the art packs that have been released so far. Oh yeah, we can do hex scroll ones quite simply. There's actually an art package that we have available, which is GM symbols. And so one of the ways that I like to work in the hex is I use a lot of just symbols. You can use a combination of different elements, but then I use adjust color layers to just change the colors of certain things. Large underground caverns, a farm with vineyards. All right, so yeah, we can do. Let's do a couple of these things today. We have plenty of time to kind of work on this stuff. We can jump in, and what I'll do is I'll show you a really basic kind of way that you can begin to create your hex grids, especially like a hex crawl. It won't take us very long. I'll give you the basics, and we probably won't go through the entire map creation process. Most hex grids are kind of set up with each hex kind of being its own entity, right? Like everything is divided very rigidly along the hexes. And so we can certainly do that. We can also do it, well, there's just a multitude of ways just to do it. So let's jump over. I will actually create a new image element here. Image record. Let's create a new one like this. And we'll just call it hex test. Oh yeah, we can kind of, we'll probably combine a lot of these great ideas into one map that we'll do after I do this short demonstration. And maybe what we can do is do a bit of a circus, maybe on some farmland with a tower, and we can do all kinds of fun stuff there. we have lots of different elements that we can use, and I can kind of show you where a lot of these images that I'll probably go to for the creation process. But yeah. So here is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump over and change our grid type, and we can change this to hexagonal like this. The size of this is really kind of irrelevant at this particular stage. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you guys how you can actually do this from the get-go without needing to have a whole lot of images that we're going to be working with here. So we can create a new painting layer. And we can actually, one of the things that Fantasy Grounds has, which I use quite a lot, but many people might not, is that there's a built-in paint tool that is just a solid kind of color here. And what we can actually do is, I'm going to make this white at first. So you can kind of see this. And we can make this any size we wish. So let's make this 25 by 25. And let's go over and make sure that our grid is kind of on here. See here, here's our grid. And what I'll do is I'm just going to lower down the opacity of this a little bit. And let's make this a bit bigger just so that we can have a little bit easier time as we manipulate through this map. And as I jump back over in here, right, we can see what I'll actually do is change this. I'm going to make this 25 by 25. And I'm going to use this to create my starting field over here. So I'm going to hold down Control. I'm going to drag this right across here. I'm going to get it pretty straight and double click it like that. So I know that it's 25 wide, and if I come back over in here, it's actually, well, this is a little bit off here, but we have 25 high, and we have that there, and that's probably a pretty good size that we want to interact with. Now, is in this layer tab here, if I don't want to start it off as whites, perhaps I want to start it off as maybe something a little bit more brown. We can kind of come in here and find whatever tone that I might want, but maybe we'll make it seem like a little bit more like parchment. And so I can begin to manipulate these values a little bit, and I might even drop down, well, no, let's leave the opacity up. Let's kind of a little bit, let's actually just make it a bit gray. Do like 150 right down the board here. Oh yes, there's a very extensive grid system. So one of the great things that you can do, and let's just talk about the grid really quickly here, because all of this is integrated exceptionally well, and a lot of this is going to be dependent on the rule system that you're actually working with. So where I'm in Core RPG, which is the very base underlying programming rule set that many of the other elements are kind of built on top of. So this is very rudimentary. It's just in these positions, but we can type in any distance suffix that we wish. We can also do a distance multiplier. So let's say, for example, and this is going to be really great for when we're creating these types of grids, because as we interact with it, we can set up our distances and all of these things. So let's say we want to have each one of these grids is going to be 25, and then we're going to put it as miles. So here, now that we have 25 miles set up, if we go back into where we're actually playing, and I use both mouse buttons to drag out, for example, a distance field here, you can see as I zoom in here, this is going to be 550 miles. And so I can kind of, here we have 75 miles as it goes across here. So I can actually have complete control over not only the grid size, width, but also how the system is going to interact with that grid, or distances, and so on. Excuse me. We can click this on to show raw distances, and so we can actually, and we'll have to switch back over to the system here, but you can see as I'm holding down Control and I'm no longer actually snapping to the grid system here, you'll be able to see that this, let me just zoom in here a little bit, and we'll do another one here. You can see that these miles and whatnot, and I should probably change the color of my dice here. Make it something that's a bit brighter. So here we can have 35.8 miles and so on. So this is a very, very powerful tool that you guys can utilize to actually deal with many of the different circumstances that you can encounter while playing. We can take off the aspect lock ratio. We can make our grids any size as we wish, and don't think that it has to be in any sort of particular type of element. So if we were doing isometric, for example, what we would do is switch to this diamond shape, make them wider than it is tall, and so on and so forth. We can also change the position of where this grid is. And so if I come back in here and let's this a little bit darker so we see what's going on. I can actually change the position of the grid, and so we have these very minor nudges that we can do here, and then larger ones. You can also switch over to a set the grid with the mouse, and you can draw out the shape of your grid, not the shape, but the exact size of it, which you would like it to be, which can greatly enhance our ability to create our grid over an existing grid system on a map. And now that we have all of this stuff kind of set up here, go back into our play area here, and I'm just going to get rid of pointers here. All of these things will interact with the system based off of how we've set up that grid. Coming back into our little painting area over here, or we're going to be using lots of different stuff here. And let's minimize this right now. We have this art package that's called GM Symbols, and inside of this particular art pack are all of these different symbols that you might want to use in the creation of these types of maps. We have lots of different types of base letters and numbers. And so you guys can set up your GM layer and do all of the different things that you might want to in your map. But we also have all kinds of different cool symbols that we can use. And they're in this neutral kind of gray, so you guys can change their color to whatever you wish. But as we begin to work here, what I'm actually going to do is, because we painted this out, I can switch over to my effects layer. Let's create a new effects actual layer itself. Tab here. We can go to adjust colors. Now what I can do with my adjust colors is I can actually paint out, and we can add textures to this. We can do everything that we do normally with any sort of map that we create. But let's say we want to do a little bit of a green area. I might just increase the green, or if I don't want to lighten the area too much, what I can do is I can reduce the red. Maybe we'll bring it down to like 5, and the blue as well. Maybe we'll take it actually a little more than that. Go like 40 and 40. We get this nice kind of like dark green color. And then I can enable a mask. Now with my mask enabled, what I can actually do is start to paint out particular areas that I might have here. And we can do it a couple of different ways. I can actually encompass all of this. I guess it depends on how much green you're going to want to have. And then I can click on this to remove areas. I can either hold down Alt, and what that's going to do is going to be allowing me to draw out any particular area I wish. You can see that this is very easy for us to kind of interact with this system here, and I can blur out those edges a little bit. What I can actually do is I can just start to draw out the different shapes of the areas that I don't want to have this green color, right? So I can begin to build all of these different areas. And I can either click this button, or if I hold down Shift, I can then add in. And I can change this blur as much as I want. Oh, so we have a question here. Is there a way to adapt different monster sizes to the hex in FGU, as shown in the DMG? Well, I'm not exactly sure specifically what you're referencing there, but yes. So whatever you change the grid to, the size of the monster will be inherent to, because the system is based off of grid, the number of grids, for example. And so I would assume that there is some sort of interaction there, but I'm not exactly sure what that might be. So whether there's an automated kind of thing that switches over to a hex or not, I'm not exactly sure. So maybe we're going to do something like this, and these can be like our grassy areas and whatnot. Maybe we'll do here. And we might even want to come down here, and we can actually jump in, and if we wish, we could make this a little bit down. And we'll probably, I think I'll keep it something like that, but let's add in another effects layer. And I'm going to drop this down in underneath. And this one I'm actually going to make scale. And we can drop down this here. You can see I've actually used no images, no R packages whatsoever so far. All I've done is kind of use these built-in tools that are available to everyone. I'm just going to drop down the opacity of my grid here a little bit. And you can also change the color of your grid. You can do anything that you want to. I think what we'll do, kind of bring it down like this. Maybe we'll light. So it's been a long time since I've actually seen it. I think we'll go up here. We'll make this a little bit darker. Bring it down to like 5. And we might even bring make it darker. We also have our darkness value here. We can do lots of kind of adjustments. And there we are with that. So let's say we want to start to build in these particular elements, right? We can create a new painting layer. And if we're going to color code these, we can do them in separate layers and whatnot. Maybe if you want to do like different regional areas and whatnot, you can certainly do that. But you can grab these kinds of elements like this. And with my stamp tool selected, as you can see here, I can hold down Control, and these will snap right into these grids. If I want to make these smaller, you can see that this is going to be adjusted based off of the grid size. If I change this grid size, then these elements are going to also be adjusted. I'm going to keep them 1. We'll fill up like a little element like this. I'll show you there's a whole bunch of different stuff that you guys can do to enhance the images, and lots of cool stuff along those. You can just start to place the round in all of these wherever you think that something might be located. And this is kind of cool too, because you could actually build this out as you guys were playing, so leaving undiscovered areas for maybe random locations and whatnot. Probably not going to have a ship there, but what we can do is you could do any sort of color that you wish. And again, we can come over onto our layers tab here, and we can adjust these colors. Maybe we want to make them a little bit yellowier, something that's going to stand out a little bit against our background. We can also create another painting layer and drop that in underneath. And we could grab one of something like these. Oh, no, we don't want to do it there. We want to do it here. And now, as we're working on all this stuff on the level here, on the, we might want to make these darker now. I think it will stand out against that background. And we can do the same here. Perhaps we'll just drop down the opacity of that. And one of the great things about working on the actual layers tab itself is that as we interact with this system, as we work with the system, and as I paint these elements around, for example, back into our symbols, it's all going to update according to what we actually have for the layer itself, as you can see here. So once something is picked, maybe we have this huge cemetery over here, kind of things like this. And then we could switch back over, drop down here. And again, I might make that a little bit bigger. So you can start to build out these elements very, very quickly. Now, if you want to do, there's lots of different ways that you can kind of interact with this system. If we go back into some of the regional maps, for example, I think what I'll do is we'll go to the same regional map that we used last time, the old world one. And I can grab this background like this. And we can use it down here instead of some of these other elements. So we can turn off this. And then we can have lots of different texture in here. So maybe if we go into this tab, what we can do is we can eyeball this out. I think it's like 25. Make this a little bit bigger. Maybe go. Yeah, the only we have some tools that are going to be coming out, Primo, which will kind of circumvent that. It'll make doing all of this stuff in that kind of context a little bit obsolete, but you'll see as it's coming. But yes, we had talked about that in the past, is creating an art package where you could have little hexes that you kind of plug in. And then again, I can also, maybe if I want to darken this up a little bit, maybe we'll bring it some like this. We have lots of neat texture in there now and whatnot. But you can see, you can really kind of interact with this system like super easily. It will back up a little bit so that we can actually see them. And in our adjust colors, we can always come in and again, we can take out certain areas. Maybe we're going to do some water down here. So we could create a new effects layer. We'll drop that down right here. Again, we'll do adjust colors. Perhaps what we'll do is we'll make blue in here. Blue quite a bit. And even make it a little lighter. Maybe something like this. We'll make it a little bit darker. And again, we'll create a mask. And then we can start to do out all of our water elements. So that's a little bit too much there. Let's bring this back. Maybe something like this. Again, we can maybe blur out those edges a little bit. So we have like a little bit of a softer kind of interaction there. And I'll just out. Make a little inlet here. And perhaps we do like a little stream or whatnot. You see how quickly you can take a very simple image, and with a couple of these elements here, we can drastically kind of change. This painting layer, we can do that as well. And you can mix and match all of these different elements together as well. But if we go back into the GM symbols. And again, because we are using everything, we've changed everything on that base layer. We don't have to worry about constantly changing all of this stuff. Maybe what if we grab like a lighthouse here? Make sure we're on our stamp tool. See that that's going to be stamped in at exactly the same color as all the other elements there. Now maybe we can grab a couple out and around. And one of the great things about doing things this way, right, is I can always come back and say, maybe I want this to be a little bit brighter here. And boom, you guys can instantly create tons of hex maps and change all of the different parameters of it. Very simple, very quick. Great. So now let's get into building an actual environment, more of a battle map. I like to separate the two distinctions between regional and battle maps, as functionality of them is drastically different. So the approach in their creation oftentimes needs to be quite different as well. Let's go into our images over here. And so we're going to use a bunch of the different thought process. We'll create a little area where there's like a circus, tower. Maybe we'll do some elevation elements and whatnot. Kind of build up lots of different stuff there. Sounds pretty fun. Now there's lots of different ways that we kind of approach this, especially if we're going to be doing it from the very get-go. And the one thing that you always want to think about when you're in your map creation process is scale. How much scale do we want to include in the map itself, right? Are we going to be using, and I'll show you, you can actually create your map and then change the grid size to adjust the scale. I will oftentimes either do that one way or the other, dependent on how large the map needs to be in comparison to the grid. So that's one of the reasons why the grid is independent of the actual size of the imagery itself. The imagery is based off of the number of grid spaces. And so to demonstrate this a little bit, let's create a new little area over here. And we can close down our image there now. We'll be working on this map for the rest of the evening here, or afternoon rather. And so we're going to be creating like a farm area, and we're going to do like a little circus bits. We might not do very extensive kind of thing, but we'll do like tents and whatnot. We have lots of tents that we have in certain art packages. I think in some of the siege ones as well. When we can build a farmhouse, we'll probably just do the exterior of all of these places, depending on time and whatnot. And then we're going to be doing like a tower, and we can do lots of different natural kind of elements as well. Maybe we'll put in some water and so on. Always fun. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start off with this is how you really want to approach it. First off, what type of climate is this going to be in? Are we in like a jungle area? Are we in a relatively moderate kind of climate? Do we want to make it a coastal town? All of these things kind of enter into not only how we want to make believable spaces, but also the aesthetic by which all of it kind of comes down to, right? And that's kind of like also the feel of the area itself. Is it kind of like this dark and gloomy place? Do we want it to be light-hearted, maybe bright and sunny and warm feeling and comfortable? And so all of these different kind of elements are the things that you want to think about as you're producing this. Oh yeah, Mediterranean. Certainly could do something like that's kind of like Mediterranean. And so that's going to help dictate not only like the style, the overarching style, what you're going to be creating. Um, so it, basically what it does is it gives you a direction to kind of adhere to, rather than just kind of doing things willy-nilly and haphazardly. If you do that, it'll oftentimes kind of feel that in your imagery, right? And like things will be a little bit out of place. And so you want to have a pretty good understanding. So I think we'll do some like water elements, but I'm thinking that this will make this a like, kind of a light-hearted, lit area. You know, lots of nice shadows and some really good illumination from our ambient light sources and some vibrant colors. That might be really fun to do. A lot of times we end up doing kind of like these dark and gloomy places like this. So this is going to be like a good kind of exercise for that. One of the ones that I usually start off with is the FG 2019 art package. There's lots of great kind of outside elements there, but we have a whole bunch of different other ones too as well. So we want to make sure that we want. So are we going to be making this in modern day times, or do we want to make it fantasy driven? What do you guys think? What's the time frame that we should create this in as well? And I'm actually going to, as we're kind of talking about this, I'm going to jump through a couple of different art packages here and start to build this. My background layers here, well, I can just type in ground, for example. And this is going to bring up all the different ground elements that I have in all the different art packages. And it's pretty good to kind of convey that I have thousands and thousands of images here, so it might take a second and probably a lot of different ground elements. So I should have really been a little bit more specific, but kind of, especially because of fantasy grounds. So yeah, let's narrow our search down here a little bit. So let's go to the 2019. And I think that most of these, yeah, we have a lot of like background images and whatnot. But I think that if we go into possibly abandoned places, I think there are some other ground elements as well. No, not. Or maybe in the have some nice things like this. Maybe we'll do something like this. We have our siege map packs, which I believe is where most of like the tents and things. Let's have a look at that as well. So we have nice tents that we can use for those elements. And yes, these are all going to be in our siege decorations. And then we have a whole bunch of these in the Goblin Camp art package. These are kind of a little bit more rough creations here. So we'll go with a little bit more of a refined kind of environment. So I guess we'll just start off. We might change this as we kind of progress here, but I'm actually going to just grab one of these base kind of backgrounds. Kind of just drop this in. Again, I'm going to change this size to 100 by 100. Line this up. This is a 25 by 25. I think we'll actually duplicate this. And I oftentimes will duplicate this rather than just enlarge that, because the texture that's on this, if I just enlarge it, it'll get a little bit distorted, which isn't that necessarily that big of a deal. But I just have a tendency to kind of like it in this, everything being in a similar detailed aspect. And drop down this the opacity on our grid here. Switch back over, and I'll create a new folder. Call this ground, not G ground. One more time there. Go. And I'm just going to drag these and drop them right. I'm going to create a new painting layer as well and drop it on top. And I'm going to call this ground textures. And this is where I'm going to be painting in all my grass and whatnot. So if I type in grass, for example, we'll find an element that we might like to use here. And so what I'm going to be looking for is like these little like patches of grass and whatnot. And we have these ones in the 2019 art package. I think I'm going to use the ones that are in I guess we will stick with the 2019 art pack for that. Now I'll type in grass, and this will bring up all the different grass elements that are in this particular art package. And I'll grab something like this, and we'll switch over to our stamp tool, and I'll make this quite large. Now again, we could do the same kind of thing here. We could just change the color of certain elements. But I'm going to be adding in some different textures and whatnot as well. So I want to kind of have a little bit more control over this. What I'll actually do is just start to stamp out some particular elements. And I'm going to do some water along here. We'll do like the farm here, and we'll do circus kind of elements. And I'm just going to turn this and drop this around. I'm going to hold down A and use my mouse wheel to drop down the opacity. And you can see what I can do now is I build up some layers. I'm going to grab some of these other grass elements. As you can see, there's a bit of a different kind of texture to this. I'm going to hold down A again, and I'm going to drop down the opacity. I just want this to be a little bit more subtle. And again, I'm going to start to stamp this around. Drop down the opacity a little more. Kind of fade this stuff out a little bit. Now I'm going to go into the coastlines. Coastal Map Pack 1 and 2. As you can see here, we have lots of different water elements. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drag and drop this down here, and we'll build this, I think, just a little bit across here. I'm actually going to rotate this. I want these waves to be kind of going this way. And we'll do one more. This. What I can actually do here is I can hold down Shift and select all of these. And now what I can do is this right in the middle here. I need to increase this by 2.5 on each side, so I'm going to increase. And that's going to right together there. I think I'll actually off, and let's make this at 15. And I'm not going to put this in my ground one. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this one water. Let's drop that right into there. I'm going to go into these brushes, and we have these coastline brushes here. So next time, the next thing that we need to talk about is what kind of beach are we going to have from our water elements here? What kind of interaction do we want? Do we want cliffs? Do we want to have, and again, I'm going to create a new painting layer. I'm going to drop this right in here. Do our little water in here on top. And we'll call this shore. And so for a quick little demonstration, what we can do here, here we have this nice rocky kind of element. And we're going to add in some kind of movement in here, kind of change this up a little bit. You see, we can just, we want it to be this. As you can see, we can just kind of create our coastline very quickly. What I would like to do with something like this is actually fade this out a little bit. I hold down A and kind of make it seem like a little bit more of a gradual. And we also have nice little cliff kind of elements here as well. We can kind of paint it out here. I'm going to go with this rocky one. If anyone else has any other suggestion. I'm going to hold down Control here. What that's going to do is it's going to snap it to the grid. So it's going to start right off as right from the edge there. Now, once I'm out here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in some additional kind of movement here. I'm going to go up and down. I'm just clicking as I move here. And what Fantasy Grounds is going to do is it's going to actually recalculate the image as go around all of these different curves and whatnot, and create all of these different elements here. Now I can come in here. So if you guys are ever doing this and have a little bit extra here, you can just come in and you can just erase this. You can also come into here and you can change the size of it. We can do it this way. Lots of different ways that we can kind of interact with this. Now what I can do, if I want to add in some additional kind of elements here, I'm going to switch back over to this guy. I'm going to drop down my opacity here. And now I can kind of paint out some additional wave elements if I want. Maybe we're going to go a little bit different. And again, I'm just going to hold down Control and end it right there. So you can do a lot of other things. We also have these effects. We have this nice little splash brush, so we can add in a lot of other elements there as well. Now, to really kind of seal this off, like we have a very consistent kind of element here that's kind of going on. We're going to create one more painting element for our ground textures up here. And again, what I can do is I can go back into my 2019 art package, and inside of, I believe it's in our, we have some additional kind of elements. I'm going to grab some rocks here in a moment as well, and we're going to kind of build up this. But I want to have a little bit more of a inconsistent depth to my shoreline. And so I can grab this. This is just a kind of default dirt element here. And I'm going to grab my color picker. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab one of these lighter kind of colors. And then that's going to add that to that particular element, right? So I want this nice dark ground, and this is not quite right. So I'm just going to adjust this to a little bit lighter here. And it doesn't have to be exact. I just wanted to get it kind of close. Let's just move these up a little bit more. I'm going to add in a little bit more blue to it. So maybe something like this. You see how this is kind of like the lighter elements here? If I want to, I can make this a little bit darker, but this is going to work really well for us. I hit OK. Now I don't want everything that I paint in here to be adjusted. So we're going to do this on a by image adjustment kind of level here. And again, if I want to save this, what I can do is I can open this up and I can hit Control C on this hexadecimal code. So that way, if I ever have to come back there, I can quickly grab that same color again and make any sort of adjustment to this one particular dirt brush here. I'm going to make it a bit smaller, and I'm also going to drop down its opacity. I'm holding down A, and I'm using my mouse wheel. And what I'm going to do while I'm doing this, while I'm kind of interacting with the system, what I'm going to actually do is kind of fade this off here. So by changing the rotation as I'm working here, I do that by holding Shift and using my mouse wheel. Probably see that it rotates there a little bit. While I'm doing that, as I'm clicking around here, what that will do is it'll break up that repetitive nature of the actual same texture being used over and over again. If we're using a texture, especially in a situation like this, and we don't rotate it, or we don't change the opacity, or we don't, you'll start to see the same image being used over and over again. Your eye will pick up on that very quickly. And to counteract that, all you have to do is just rotate it once in a while. And it's certainly not every time. You can see that this is starting to become a much more natural kind of interaction. And we have a lot of different, and again, you can see that we're going to see this like repeating pattern up here. Now we can use other textures layered on top, and that's going to break that up for us. You can see now it's starting to look way less of this repeating kind of elements here. Now again, I can grab any of these little grass elements as well. I'm going to use those right in this same layer. And I'm going to drag some of this stuff up as well over some of these areas. And we have a really good base that we can kind of work from now. And this is what we're going to be building everything on top of. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to plot out all of our different elements here. One of the things that as you're doing your map creation, you want to kind of have an idea. It's super fun to kind of just let things progress and do all those random and free-flowing kind of map designs. However, there's a downside to that, and that is sometimes you're going to be running into problems where you create elements and you kind of finish them, and then you move on to other elements, and then you have to go back and change, and that's never fun. So it's a good idea to just kind of block out where you want things to be roughly, their scale and their size, and all of those interactive elements, so that you don't run into that a little bit later on. So what I like to do is I'll create my environment like this, and then I'll start to place all of the other elements around that I kind of want to interact with. And then I'll build up on layers beyond that. So I'm going to be doing rocks, and I'm going to be doing lots of other plant and other ground elements, but I don't want to do those yet because I want to place all my buildings down next. And then I'll know how those will interact with the environment, right? We're going to maybe do like a little bit of a dock down here. So I don't want to cover things up with other things. I don't want to do too much work without having a really good understanding of where everything's going to be. So I'm just going to grab some of these tents and whatnot. We can place those down very quickly. And then we'll grab some roof elements and build our little farm and maybe like a barn and whatnot and do some fence. And so perhaps this is all like one kind of farm near maybe a lake or whatnot, and then we'll have like maybe a traveling show that's come by here. We're going to go into our siege elements here, and I believe it's in this one. All like siege items there. Yeah, here we have a whole bunch of different tents and what. I'm going to grab this one at first here. We can make it a little bit bigger here. We're going to do like a couple of them. So if we're doing this in like the scale of Dungeons and Dragons, we know that each square is going to be about 5 feet, right? So as we're sitting right now, we are just about 6 squares across, and we know that 6 times 5, obviously, is going to be about 30 feet, which is a pretty decent sized tent. But we can kind of change all of this stuff as well. So we can make this any size that we want. The reason why I'm going to be using this one is because I'll have a lot better control over the colors that I want to do here. We can kind of place some other elements. Now, if I'm going to be changing these a lot, I'm going to create a new painting layer here, and I'm just going to call it structures. And this is going to be all of those structure elements that we want to kind of interact with. That would be any sort of the buildings, any sort of, well, structured elements that we're going to be interacting with later, possibly, right? So we want to be able to hide this if we're going to be doing interiors to our locations. I like to do it all on one layer so that it's not too cumbersome. You don't have to find where things are. It just is a little bit easier from running it from the GM's perspective. So I'm going to place just a couple of these around. We'll do a couple of different shapes and sizes, and I'm going to be doing them different colors. So I'm not going to be doing the change of, I don't want to change all of the different structure colors uniformly. I want to be able to have individual control over them. So I can go into my color picker here. And what I can do is I can just kind of drag around inside of this. And maybe we'll make this, maybe we'll do, I think red is kind of like the traditional kind of color, isn't it? Of these kind of elements. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust these. I don't want it to be too overly bright here. Maybe something like this. And don't worry, it's going to be kind of a uniform element here, but we're going to be adding highlights and shadows and whatnot. So this is going to change quite drastically. This is just going to be like a kind of a general overview, and I'm going to make this quite large, I think. Let's make this actually like 9 by 9, so a nice big tent that we're going to be placing over. And then we can build other structures out and around it and do all kinds of different stuff. And I'm going to put it kind of up here. I'm just going to stamp that right there. Now I can go back into my tint here, and actually let's change it up. We'll do maybe something like this one. We get a little bit more of a change in the perspective a little bit. Maybe this one's like tilted on a little bit of a hill or so on. Again, I'm going to change the colors of this. I'm going to make this one a little bit, maybe we'll make it a little yellowier. This. And again, once we add in all of the different shadows and highlights and whatnot, with it. And I can do stuff kind of poking out from underneath this. You see how the front of this is all open? And that's going to be great for us. I can actually kind of create a little bit of a glimpse in there. Maybe this is some sort of other, we could even build like a stage and whatnot. Excuse me while I have a little my coffee here. And then let's do one more tent. This will give us, we'll be adding in lots of different elements around here. But this will give us a pretty good understanding about what we're going to be doing here. I think we'll do something like this. And I'm actually going to flip it. I think, well, that's just, yeah, that's something like this. Get both of these down in this direction. Again, we can kind of change these colors around. Maybe we'll make this one kind of red as well. Or we can actually grab one of these ones. Maybe something like this, and then we can change these to add a little bit more variety here. Seaside. Something like this. Great. Now let's go into, we have a whole bunch of different types of roof elements. And we have, and this is kind of divided up into lots of different ways that we can kind of interact with it. We have brushes where we can paint out different shapes and whatnot. We also have a lot of like static kind of elements. So if we're doing this, let's say in medieval times, we might want to use like one of these rather kind of like thatched roofs and whatnot. We have all kind. We could build any sort of roof that we want. What do you think? Should we do it? What do you guys think? There. I think what we'll do is just grab some of these from the Coastal Map Pack 2 and kind of build out a nice structure. And again, I'm going to put this right into the Structures tab here. And I think that these colors are going to be fine for us. Start to build out a bit of a farm here by the water. Change this. Let's do like 6 by 6. Get a little bit more square. And I'll grab guy. Actually, you know what? Let's build out from first. And I can grab this. Make this feel a little bit more multi-layered. Back there. Actually, then we'll do it. Great. Now we can start to do like our farmland out back through here. And kind of do that as well. And now the last thing I'm going to do is we have a whole bunch of different docks and different dock elements that we can kind of use. Here we can actually type in the word brush. This is going to give us there. Let's go to, I guess we could use, they're all in the coastal map pack. So let's just go there. We have these brushes, and then in our decorations, we have all of these kind of elements. These are going to work out well. Which most of these, even if they don't say brush, I believe they can. Yeah. And so this is where the size of the grid in conjunction to what we're trying to achieve is kind of important, right? We can see here if we want to have a usable space. Now I'm going to make that 3 by 8 is. We round that out to 4. Actually, it's rotated, right? So this, let's do this one. Get a little bit more. Now let's there. There we go. And so again, what I'm going to do is in this structure kind of element, and I want to be able to kind of go above and below it as well, but I can just kind of drag out whatever shapes I want here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to double click there. And maybe we'll make a little bit of a T down here. So again, I'm going to hold down Control. Kind of click these around and start to build out these structures. I'm going to do another one, but I'm going to do it a little bit closer. Like, I think I'm going to actually grab this. And we'll do like a element here. And then I can type in posts and I'll grab some posts. Like some larger ones. One that's kind of like off kilter. Great. Now we have a pretty good understanding of what all of our basic structures are going to be. So now we can start to add in all of the other elements that kind of build up and make this more of a complete environment. So we can do a couple of different things at this stage, or I like to go a couple of different ways here. I can start to pile in a lot of like detail and environmental stuff. Or I can do my shadows, and then if we do our shadows correctly, then it kind of layers on top of those things. So it really doesn't matter which direction you kind of go into. I guess it depends on how much trees we're going to be placing around and that, and so on and so forth. So if we're going to do some trees, probably put them in now, actually. So I'm going to actually just type in tree. And again, this is going to take a second because I have not only all of the art packages, but also lots of tests. I'm going to grab some of these other elements. We have some nice ones in additional kind of art packages here. And then we can kind of grab. And we also have, I'm going to kind of mix and match some of this stuff. These are going to be great. So I'm going to create a new painting layer. I'm going to call this one trees. And we're going to want this always going to be on top. So we want to have this so that it kind of overshadows our buildings. And we can layer these on top of each other and make these interesting kind of structures and whatnot. This one is from the Jungle Art Pack. I'm going to grab some of these additional kind of elements as well. And we can just start to place these around wherever we feel like they're going to be. Grab some of these evergreens. We'll be creating paths and all kinds of stuff. Like a pasture pine out through here. And I'm just going to kind of mix and match these a little bit. Not going to be worried too much about. I want a nice variety. We're going to make this a nice bright scene full of sunlight and vivid color. Maybe we'll put one over here as well. And so again, what I like to do is layer these in a particular way. We can kind of just like build these on top of each other, change their size and their rotation to create interesting new shapes. I don't want to do. I don't want to feel as though things are a little bit too static. But I think that's probably pretty good for right now, don't you? And so what at this stage is where I'm going to start to put in my shadows. I'm going to do shadow. Now we can do shadows a couple of different ways. I like to paint them in, and I also like to use an effects layer. I'm going to also create a new effects layer. And this is going to be an adjust colors. I'm just going to drop down the brightness. Probably put this somewhere around like 45. And then I'm also going to lower down the red and the green to give it a little bit of a bluish tinge to it, right? And then we're going to create a mask. And we can start to paint in, kind of rough in some of the shapes, shadows. And what we'll do is we'll blur these out. And what we do is we use these shadows to kind of help determine scale. My light's going to be coming from up here. And I can just kind of pull this out. This. The taller something is, the more lengthy of a shadow it's going to, depending on the position on obvious. I'm also going to do these trees. I want to have some nice shape to these trees. So all I'm doing is holding down Alt when I want to do a shape other than rectangle. And see here where this shouldn't probably be in shadow, depending on how tall this is in comparison. I can hold down Alt and Shift, and I can just you can see already we have developed a lot more depth to our creation here. And yep, oh yeah. So well, thanks. And yes, we're going to be getting right into that. That'll be the next stage. We're going to do rocks and all the other elements. So we'll be doing our fields back here, and I'll show you guys how I will create. We can do crops and we can do vines and all kinds of different stuff. Jump right in and start to create all these different. And one of the reasons why you want to kind of do this stage first is you want to know where you're going to be placing all of these other bits and stuff here. I kind of show you, because if we did a whole bunch of different elements and then covered it up with our trees and our structures, then we will start to get into a situation where we're wasting a lot of the work that we do. I'm just gonna lighten up these shadows just a little bit. So I'm gonna make this like 47. And that's one of the other great things about kind of interacting with this system, is that I can now come in and I can adjust all of these shadow elements after the fact. So there's lots of different ways that we kind of interact with it. The next thing we're going to do is we can start to add in our plants and our rocks and all of those things, right? So I'm going to go back into my coastal line here and in our decorations. We have a whole bunch of different rocks. And so to kind of make this a little bit easier on myself, I'm just going to type in rock. And these are going to be all these rocks that are kind of pop up here. I'm going to go back down into this painting layer that's underneath all of my structures. And I might even go above it at times or on the structure elements, depending on how I want all of this stuff to kind of interact. But I can grab these rock elements. Let's go back into the paint area here, make sure we have our stamp tool selected. And you'll see I can jump back in and I can add more shadows and I can do all kinds of different stuff here. But what I actually want to do is I want to do a little bit of rock like poking out from underneath here. We'll do some out in the water itself. And again, we're going to be building this stuff up so that it makes a whole lot more sense. We're going to adding like splashes around, and we'll be doing some other effects layers and whatnot that kind of interact with that. We'll do like a large kind of stone structure here, rocks. And again, what I'm doing is I'm going to just rotate these around and change shape and build up new shapes by layering these on top of each other. And we can make this one like a little smaller. Maybe it sticks out like this. Use some different ones here. Maybe we'll have one like here, half in the water as well. Great. And now at any time, I can always jump back into here. I can go back to reveal area here, and we can add in our shadows for these guys. And how we want them to interact with this. We're going to do a highlight layer as well. We want to really make this feel as though it is warm and inviting. We're going to do some nice bright colors. We can do some other rock elements in addition. We can go back into our painting layer, go right down to this one underneath our structure, and we can build out some rocks. We have our stamp tool, so maybe coming out from underneath some of the trees. Grab. Maybe we'll build like a stone wall. But again, we want to just create some additional kind of elements that might be around that we can kind of build off of, right? Like, and layer these on top of each other. Just to add a little bit of variety to the place around. And now we can type in, well, I'll put in plants, and we'll see we have a lot of plants as well. Grab some of these these are going to be great for doing like crops and whatnot. I'll show you guys how you can quickly kind of build that up. Let's grab some of these. I think we'll start off with some of these ground plants, grassy elements and whatnot. That's from underwater plants. We got some ferns here. But whenever you're building these up in layers, what you want to do is start from what's going to be furthest away from the viewer. You're the viewer. So the furthest away it is, and then build up on top of it. You don't always have to worry about it too much, as you can add in additional painting layers in between where you need them to be, things that are underneath. But I think we'll grab some of these ground plants, kind of start off with. And we have like lots of cool little stuff here. We have these little clovers and whatnot. I'm going to grab some of these like bigger kind of conglomerates of them. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of stack these up. And we might even want to lower down the opacity a little bit. Have some of this poking out from underneath. And we can grab some of these additional kind of ground plants as well. Maybe some. We'll go with maybe like this. We can do some coming out from underneath. And you see what we can do is we can go back down into this ground texture. Maybe I want some that's out from underneath here. I can do that, but I want to be able to also build some stuff up. We might even want to do something here. back into. We can do some steps coming. Grab some of these dandelions. Start to paint some around. And we can do like this. Areas. And I think what we'll do is grab some flowery type stuff. I want to do some flowers around. Start off with something along these lines. I'm going to make this a bit smaller. You can do some kind of like coming talk. Oh, this is Fantasy Grounds Unity. All of this map creation elements are included in Fantasy Grounds. I'm just going to kind of randomly place them around. We have lots of kind of build some of this stuff up. Before we do any more of those plants, I think I'm going to grab some of these like really bright little flowers. I'm going to make them rather small here. Kind of place these in and around some of the stuff. See, just that small amount of color really begins to add. We can do some bushes and stuff and do like different color flowers. Fun. Next, I'm going to grab some of these bushes. Desert Ruins art package, but I'm going to grab these ones from here. And I'm going to start to build out some. You can see this is starting to get very natural looking. I want to build out some like hedgy kind of areas here. Change this location. We can create some really interesting. Maybe do some stuff that's like poking out from edges of these buildings. And we can build like a fence and we'll And we'll be able to add in a lot more elements as well. Kind of progress shadows, highlights, and things. Great. Now let's go back into the plants. Let's continue on some of these plant areas, and then we'll I want to do some additional kind of plants. Really make this feel like a lived-in kind of place here. And what we can do, and one of the things that I really like to do is layer these. Make it feel like that these are kind of constant interaction in all of these different elements. Like when you put in something along these lines, what we can do is build right on top. We might want to do some like lone kind of bushes out here in the middle. Like that. And we can grab maybe some ferns. We'll do we'll use some of these as like our crops. Or I want to do a little bit of a lighter one on top of these dark. See that that really works really well. Do a nice kind of great. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to type in the word fence here. And then brush. And that's going to pull up all of my brush fences here that I have readily available. I'm going to do something that's pretty simple here. I think we might go with something that is a little bit, rustic feeling. We have some metal ones. Stone one. We have a white picket fence. I think we're going to go with this one actually. I go to my structures, or I might actually do it underneath. That a little bit bigger. Yeah, I think we'll do it. We'll do it on this tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my line tool. I'm going to maybe we'll bring it up like this, there. And again, maybe what we'll do is kind of just have this illusion that it kind of goes up through here, expanding out on there. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of fence that X there as well. Out like. Now that we have a bunch of new elements in here, I think we'll go back into our shadow tab here and go back to reveal area. And we can just add in some little bit of shadow, other elements. I think we'll even add in a shadow. We're going to paint in a little bit more nice kind of shadows. This is going to give us a good baseline to start with. And all these little bushes, whatnot, we can add in a little. Great. The next thing we're going to do is let's create some little garden areas over here. Now we can do this a bunch of different ways, and one of the ways that we want to kind of do this, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create some rows of plants here. And so if I go back and I'm just going to type in plant once again, I'm going to get a listing of all these different ones. But here's something that looks like it could be a vegetable or whatnot. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drag this up in here, make it kind of small, and I'm going to use the line tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly kind of pull out a whole row of them. Now this is going to look a little bit wonky here. It's going to be very, very, as you can see, it's very uniform. But I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I trace this end. Here we have this nice line. Now I'm going to switch to my my stamp tool. And now I can kind of come back in here. Maybe what I'll do is even do some color adjustment. well. And we can change the size of the. This is going to make it seem, as you can see here, no longer feels like that repeating pattern. It is. We want this to kind of feel not so contrived, right? It's got to feel like it is natural. You can see how quickly you can kind of do that. And we might do a couple of rows of that. It's still quite straight and whatnot, so we could even come in, and if we wanted to, we could remove a little section of it. Maybe, and then we could grab, maybe we'll do like a little one in here. Now it's going to feel a little bit even better. And then we can grab another plant and do something similar with it. Let's grab something like this guy. Again, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Just going to pull down a straight line of it. Might even erase. And now I can switch back over. Yeah, I can kind of. And again, we can change the color here a little bit. Let's drop down the green. And boom, we have a whole nice little rows that we have created here. Now, this obviously is just a very simple way of creating like lines of these things. We maybe do a couple of more. But to get to the kind of meat of it all, we got to make this look like it is rows, right? Tilled earth, all of that kind of stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new effects layer. I'm going to drop this down into my ground area here. We can bring this down to just colors, and we're going to drop down the brightness of this here a little bit. Create a mask. And we can kind of fill in this little area here. We can blur out those edges. And I don't want this to be such a rigid creation here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just rough up some of these edges here. And we can also, well, there's so much we can do. But what I'm actually going to do is I want to do a little bit of a lighter kind of construct of some dirt. Remember our little dirt thing that we used down here? I don't know if I've copied anything else or not, but let's find out. We're going to go back into the 2019 art package, our decorations. Grab this guy. There it is, same as before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down A and select it here. I'm going to make this quite transparent. Make it pretty. And here where I have all of my plants and whatnot, this one, but I put this down in underneath my structures. And then I should just type in crops. Like I had my caps lock. Try that again. So on this lower layer underneath here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of click out a little bit And this is going to be above that adjustment thing that I did. I'm going to drop down that opacity a little bit more. I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. What I'm actually doing is I'm setting up to create a little bit of a mound feel here. I'll show you how this is going to work. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the tint here, and I'm going to make this a little bit darker. A little bit darker. Yeah, something like this. Red though. And I'm going to do exactly the same kind of thing, but on the other side here. Now this is going to be an addition to, we're going to add in a little bit of shadows here as well. And so I've showed you guys how you can use the effects layer to create a shadow. You can see that's really starting to feel very natural, like tilled earth that has plants growing in it. But now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this, go to the shadow layer, painting layer. I'm going to use this, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hold down R, G, and B and use my mouse wheel to bring this down to black. I'm going to hold just B, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit and put a little bit more blue in it. I'm going to drop this down, and I'm actually going to make this quite a bit darker than I expect because I'm going to adjust this after the fact. But here I'm going to start to going to be a lot darker than I actually want it to be. And I'll adjust this after the fact. Now I can switch back over and I can use this alpha slider to now adjust that shadows. I'm a little bit more in line with what I want to do. I'm actually going to be using this shadow layer to do a lot of the additional kind of stuff that we want. Maybe along these edges of these things and a little bit more of control doing things that way. I can do nice shadows coming off of all these pylons. Maybe create a little bit more in these little areas of ambient occlusion where we're going to have neat little interactions. What we can do is we can actually change this shape of this or oblong, kind of go along these edges. And you can see that that is a little bit even, a little bit too much there. I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to hold down A, and I'm just going to drop down the that a little bit more trans. This is the kind of stuff that really makes your maps feel a little bit more fleshed out. You have now, all of this stuff is certainly not anything that is necessary for playing, but fun to do. Oh, it's Stardew Valley. And see it like in through here with rocks, I can emphasize the shape of them. Yeah, as we come out, it does add a lot here. Well, while we're at it, why don't we go into the coastal art pack here and into our deck. Oh, I think it's next. We have this nice little splash. Let's do the same thing. Let's go into our water. I'm actually going to use the shore line here. Here we have this nice splash. I'm going to drop this down very low in its opacity. I'm going to start to build up some of this foam around some of these rocks. I'm going to fade it out in surrounding waves here. All I'm doing is just the very low opacity image here. I'm just kind of clicking and moving my mouse around. And I'll rotate it once in a while by holding Shift and using my mouse wheel. Again, we'll do the same thing here. I'll make it quite large. So that kind of randomness, that ability to kind of paint beneath these things, add a lot. You see that this is really starting to break up coastline. So the question is, can you add story maps? Oh, you mean like different stories? Yes. Yeah, we can do it all. We can build it all right in through here. If we have time, we'll do some interior stuff. We only have about an hour left, but if we get to that, and if not, we can always do it next time. We could do the inside of maybe one of these things. And that's why we want to keep all of our structures on the same level, because this is all the outside kind of view of the structure. So we can hide this, and this will all happen in real time. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll group this with my shadows, so that I'll put all of this stuff kind of together in one folder and then hide that whole. And that will update in real time to your players. So what you can actually do is build your different floors and whatnot, kind of have your interiors. But yes, you can do exactly the same thing. We can do layered elements, hide them as players kind of progress. So go back down to our shore area here, and again, I'm gonna build up foaminess, do some here. Probably want to do some dock as well. I'll do some larger ones, just create some variations of water. Bring it small and sails. Drop down more. And so what I can actually do, you can actually get in here and do as much kind of detail as you want to. For example, I can grab this color picker. I'm going to bring this up so you can kind of see. If I grab the actual eyedropper tool, I might want to come in here and grab one of these dark colors, and this will emulate that, right? And again, what I can do is I can hold down A on my keyboard, make sure I can bring down that opacity. So not only can I do like these wavy kind of structure, right? I can also do like little shadow elements that I want to paint in, but really kind of break up a lot of the way that this interacting together. Creating like turbulence in the water. And of course, we're going to have to do another effects layer. We're going to drop this down into here as well. And we're going to add in some water elements. Now you can see this is going to affect everything. And this also should be noted, you can actually use this, turn off the droplets and whatnot, to kind of simulate the movement of fields of grass. You can change all of these things. Keep the droplet on here a little bit. get this kind of rippling effect. And we're going to create a mask here. Because this is just in our water little area down here, I'm going to drag this across, move these here, and then we'll blur out the edge of this. Kind of a nice gradual change here. Now what we can do is we can change all of these parameters. Down our intensity a little bit. Down the speed of this. We get lots of cool kind of interactions. All of our water is in motion. Starting to look really great. And again, I think I'll come back in here and just add in a bit more like darker kind of elements. Maybe out here. Very cool. Now using all of these different layers and kind of organizing them, it gives me really good access to kind of go back and change things and interact with this in lots of cool ways, right? I come back into my ground textures. And again, I'm going to jump on over. We're going to create some pathways, whatnot. We can do this lots of different ways. I'm actually going to use another brush for this. So let's go back into our, well, we can actually just type in path brush. We have stone, cobblestone. I thought it was, maybe it's trail. Yeah, here we go. I'm actually going to grab in one of these. And I'm just going to use the line tool here. And again, I'm going to grab my eyedropper. And I'm going to pick like a light little element like this. That's going to be okay for me. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to drop down the opacity of this quite a bit. And I think what we'll do is maybe we'll have, we can do like some path here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in underneath out. We're going to make this seem a lot more believable too. Kind of create some little elements. I'm going to have it kind of come out here and then I'm going to fade it off by these are going to be my base here. Got my stamp tool selected. I'm going to blend these together here. I'm going to do a little bit along these pathways. I'll grab some of this grass as well. We'll do some little patches of this. And maybe we'll just have around these. Great. Things are really starting to come along here. Starting to look really good. All right, so maybe what we'll do over in this area is we'll create like a outside, almost like amphitheater. Or maybe what we'll do is we'll build some wooden structures over here. Maybe like outside stages, more along those lines. And we could set up some little booths and things. Perhaps. What do you guys think? I think while we're contemplating that, I'm going to switch back over to the shadow layer. And again, I'm going to drop this down, give it a little bit more blue. Then I'm going to exaggerate the size of this. What I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to paint in the little shadows here. I'm going to drop down. I think we'll add a booth for lemonade. Yeah, we have this nice little open area here. We should definitely build something. We go back into, let's go to the coastal map pack here. We have a lot of these like dock elements, but we can kind of use these to build basically anything we wish. I don't want to do it on my shadow layer. Structures. Probably put like a little stage. And we have like these kind of fences, kind of things around. Make it feel a little bit more closed space over here. And we can jump back into our shadows. We want to make up on. And why don't we actually, before we get too much further, I'm going to create another effect. I'm going to do the same kind of thing, except I'm going to do it in the opposite direction. Brighten it up here. We're going to make it a little bit yellow. This is going to be our highlights. Just like 55 across the board. Again, we're going to create our little out. It's going to help us have our that feeling of that great sun. These. I'll even do some out. Well, not drastic. Here and there. Probably up like. And then we'll do some on these down here. I want to blur it just more. And on this shadow layer, what I can actually do, so switch back over to our painting tab here. Have our stamp tool selected. What I'll do is I'll do something similar that I did with the shadows, except I'm going to hold down B, and I'm just going to make this a little bit yellow. Then I'm going to hold down by A and make this a very subtle kind of like some of these areas out through a bit too much for me. Drop down that opacity a little more. Up. Also going to make it feel as though ground is a little bit uneven here. A little bit of a hill. Feels like there's a little. Even do some yellow area. Very cool. You can grab one of these awnings. Back to our structures. Make this will be our lemonade stand. Color of this. Maybe when we can go back down into our elements down, we should add in some decorative elements around. These are the kind of things that I really feel like adds a real lived-in kind of feeling. Should we put a boat in the water? as it begins to progress, it's such a rabbit hole. Start to do stuff over and over. What we'll do is we'll actually grab some out from underneath here. I'm going to go down into this painting layer. Amp tool. And we can do something similar down here. Down this particular. What should we do inside of this tent? You guys have any suggestions? Grape Ape? You guys remember Grape Ape? And we can actually use some of these. We have all the different whatnots. You can actually construct your own ship from a lot of these pre-built ones. So and we can just type in mast, for example. I'm currently using many different art packs, but the one that I'm in currently is FG Coastal Map Pack 2. You can actually build a little. Well, I think we'll just leave. I think we definitely need planks. And now we can go back into all of our adjust color things here and add in, move where we don't want shadows. We want to definitely have like a nice shadow coming off of the edge of this boat onto the water, but we don't want to have it here. We want it here. And then we can go into the same we want to come here, and I'll actually that. Very cool. What other elements do you guys think we should add to this? We'll keep that like a barn. Some stables. We should also add in some water disturbance from. We can kind of paint. Oh, you know what else we could do? We can go into the underwater art package. And we can grab barnacle shells. Oh yeah, we could do like wagons and stuff. Barnacles on our. Yeah, we could put a cage in the back of a car. Like here, over here. Yeah, maybe we'll do it. Like maybe we'll move. We can put a cover on it, like a metal plate. Oh yes, a big disaster. Do all kinds of things on fire. I think what we'll do is a couple of posts around. A little bit too large. Kind of think that we should do like some banners and whatnot draped around. Oh yeah, fireworks, that's cool. What I'll do is I'll do something similar to what we did up the ground a little bit around these. I think what we want, rope. And what I can do is maybe create, or what we can do is also think an interior map pack. Yeah, these. We can hang some bits of banners. So yeah, so let's grab some of these other elements here. We can add in our little bits of shadow from to really kind of bring it to the forefront. The first thing is we can just do our effects layer here. Add in a little stuff along these lines. Well, we are winding down here towards the end of the stream. Do you guys have any other questions, or did I do anything that now all of the maps that we make do eventually go up onto a forge. So you guys will be able to download this map, put it up there, and use it as long as you have access to the art packages that we use, either through the art subscription or if you've purchased them, then you'll be able to use all of these. Oh yeah, thanks Play Games Patty. Thanks for joining us. A little bit of subtle kind of ground change. You can see how that's starting to feel like a hill a little bit of shadow. Oh, thanks so much, Magnificent. We stream every Saturday. I start at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We run till just about 6. We should do, this is kind of barren in here, so we should probably add in other plant elements or something. Do some stuff down in through here as well. But yeah, what a great map. What a good idea, you guys. Very cool. And depending on releases and how things are going, we can either continue working on this map next week, maybe do some of the interiors, or we can start a whole new project. Well, last call for any final questions or anything that they would like have further explained inside of the image workspace here. You can ask any question you like. Whether I know the answer or not is debatable, but oh yes, tonight, Fabled Dice. All right, guys. Well, if there's no further questions, I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we will see you all next time. So take care, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully, you guys have lots of fun games you can